The notification lit up John's phone at 8:03 p.m., a tag from Sophia's livestream. At first, he didn't think much of it. She was always posting something these days, usually about charity dinners or raising awareness for Ryan's condition. But this time, as he opened the video, the sound cut through the quiet room like a blade. "I'm so happy to share this moment with all of you," Sophia said, her eyes glistening under studio lighting. Her voice was soft, but brimming with purpose. "Ryan, the man who once saved my life, he's sick now, and he only has months left." She paused, lips trembling, not with sorrow, but anticipation. "He's never been in a relationship, never had the chance to leave something behind, so I've decided." She looked into the camera, glowing. "I'll be the one to carry his legacy. I'm doing IVF, I'm giving him a child." The chat exploded with hearts and applause emojis. Sophia smiled wider, placing her hand gently over her abdomen. "For you, Ryan, no matter how many rounds it takes, I will endure them all." John didn't blink, he didn't move, he simply stared at the screen, the faint reflection of the livestream shimmering in his eyes. She hadn't told him, not a word. The last time they spoke, she had said she was going to a specialist consultation, for work stress. Now she was announcing motherhood, for someone else. His thumb moved, slowly, deliberately. He tapped the like button. Then, in the comments section, wrote, "If this is what love looks like to you, Sophia, then this is goodbye." Then he locked his phone, quietly set it face down, and sat in silence. Not a flicker of rage crossed his face, no shattered glass, no raised voice. He simply exhaled, steady and long, as if letting go of something that had already been dead for a long time. On the table beside him sat the wedding planning folder he had meticulously updated every week: guest lists, floral arrangements, menus. Sophia had never once opened it. Outside, the city carried on. Neon lights blinked across buildings. Somewhere far off, a couple laughed as they passed beneath his window. Inside, the air didn't move. A single post had ended 5 years. John reached for the calendar on the wall. His fingers found the red marker beside it. He looked at the wedding date, exactly 28 days away. He drew a clean, silent X through it, then got up and began to pack. John had always been a man who lived quietly, not because he lacked depth, but because he didn't see the need to broadcast his emotions. His presence didn't command a room, but it steadied it. People trusted him, professors, colleagues. Even Sophia's parents, who once said, "He's the kind of man who doesn't need to raise his voice to make you feel safe." For 5 years, John had been engaged to Sophia. They met in college. She was a literature major with a sharp tongue and striking posture, the kind that always made an impression. He was pursuing biochemistry, always with a pen clipped to his shirt and data on his tongue, never drama. They weren't an obvious match. Sophia was used to attention. John didn't give it recklessly. But there was one moment, 5 years ago, when she asked him if he believed in love at first sight. "No," he replied, "but I believe in love that chooses to stay." That stayed with her. And so began something slow, uneven, and in John's eyes, worth building. He wasn't the kind of man who made grand romantic gestures. He made sure her fridge had her favorite almond milk before she noticed it was gone. He'd warm her car on winter mornings before she stepped outside. When her mother fell ill 2 winters ago, it was John who sat for hours in the cold hallway of the hospital, spoon-feeding her congee while Sophia updated her Instagram stories in the cafeteria. He planned the wedding without complaint, called vendors, paid deposits, coordinated flower samples. Sophia had said she didn't care about the details, so John took care of them all. He thought she was just busy. Stressed. He never thought she was elsewhere. In their shared apartment, John had labeled the wedding binder meticulously. Guest list, menu preferences, seating chart drafts. Every note was dated, every conversation they never had. He documented it in case she changed her mind and wanted to be involved, but she never asked. Her messages stayed short. Up to you. Busy. And when she wasn't with him, she was at Ryan's. Always Ryan. Ryan had once been her classmate, a brief acquaintance from university. He'd disappeared for years. Then, 6 months ago, he returned with a cancer diagnosis and a sob story. Sophia inhaled like scripture. The man who saved her once. John couldn't pinpoint what that saving was. Sophia never really explained. But she started visiting Ryan's home often. then the hospital, then taking overnight bags. He's too weak, she said. He needs company, just to talk. John had believed her. He remembered their early days, when she used to sit on his desk and trace her fingers along his notes, teasing him for how seriously he took molecular structures. You treat atoms better than people, she used to laugh. He'd always smile, but she never noticed that it wasn't atoms he was thinking about, it was her. He used to take photos of her when she wasn't looking. Reading by the window, tying her hair. His phone was full of those fragments. She never liked any of the ones where she didn't pose. One day, a month before the wedding, John came home to find her in the kitchen, wiping down the counter. She never cleaned. Ryan likes a tidy space, she said when he asked. She hadn't cooked dinner, but there was a warm soup in a thermos labeled, for Ryan. She told John to drop it off on his way to work. I'm not your courier, he said gently. She looked at him like he had insulted her. I thought you cared, can't you help someone who's dying? He didn't reply, just took the thermos, and wondered if anyone knew he'd been working extra shifts at the university just to cover the wedding expenses. 6 months ago, John had been offered a closed-door research position in the capital, only given to 5 candidates nationwide. A 2-year contract, no outside contact during the project. His professor had pulled strings to include him. He turned it down. Sophia had just said yes to the proposal. She wanted to stay in City A, her job, her family, her roots. He didn't hesitate. He told the professor, there's someone here I want to build with. That night, he brought home champagne. She didn't ask why. Now, looking back, John realized she never once asked him what that fellowship would have meant to him. She only ever asked what he could give up for her, and he always had, until now. The night after Sophia's live stream, after she declared her womb belonged to Ryan's last wish, John sat at their dining table and scrolled through their message history. Out of the last 20 messages, 19 were his. Where are you? Want me to bring soup for your mom? I can drop you off later. Don't forget your appointment, I miss you. She'd responded to none, or, when she did, busy, I'm with Ryan, go alone. He shut the phone off and placed it in the drawer. That evening, Sophia came home late. Her heels clicked against the wood like nothing was out of place. Hey, she said, tossing her bag on the couch. John looked up from the table. You're back. Ryan was tired, she said. I stayed till he fell asleep. Her voice had warmth he hadn't heard in months. He nodded. I hope he's okay. She didn't notice the suitcase in the corner, or the way his eyes didn't follow her when she moved to the bedroom. He'd already made peace with what she hadn't said, with what she'd never say. Sophia poured herself a glass of cold water like it was any other evening. Her phone buzzed with a message from Ryan. John caught the name flash before the screen dimmed. She didn't hide it. She never did. That was the thing. She acted like she had nothing to be ashamed of. John, she said, casually setting the glass down. I'm going through with the IVF. John was rinsing out a coffee mug, his sleeves rolled, the same way he always kept them when cooking for her, doing her dishes, tying her luggage zippers shut before she went off on Ryan duty. He paused. For him. She nodded. Yes. A silence fell. Not tension, just a soft, sterile quiet, like the hum of an air purifier in a hospital room. I don't understand, he said. It's not cheating, she replied immediately, without emotion. It's gratitude, it's fulfilling a promise. John slowly turned to face her. Gratitude involves flowers, not insemination. Sophia sighed like she was already bored. Ryan saved my life once. You weren't there. You wouldn't understand. He's dying, John. This is his last wish, to leave something behind. And your wish? I'm strong enough to give this to someone who deserves it. The words weren't angry. They were calm, final, like she'd rehearsed them. I thought I was your future. You were. But Ryan was my past. And sometimes, that comes back stronger than we expect. John said nothing, just nodded. He expected more debate, more chaos, maybe an argument with broken plates and raised voices. But Sophia didn't even glance back as she walked to the bedroom. Later that night, she curled into him in bed like everything was okay, like she hadn't just said she was carrying another man's child out of some warped debt she never mentioned in 5 years. John stayed still. She pressed her head to his chest, whispered, You're quiet. Are you angry? No, he said, just thinking. About, H. He kissed the top of her head gently. What love looks like, really looks like. She smiled into his shirt, as if she'd won something. The next morning, John got up early. Her alarm hadn't rung yet, she was still asleep. He went to the laundry to grab his work shirt, and the envelope fell out. White, slim, unsealed, like she didn't even think it needed hiding. He didn't open it at first, just stared at the envelope resting on the washer, the edges slightly curled from being in her jacket pocket. A small logo in the corner, Riverstone Fertility Center. He opened it with methodical calm. One sheet. A black and white print of an ultrasound. Another paper clipped beneath, blood work, confirming successful embryo transfer. Date, 3 weeks ago. He stared at it for a long time. Sophia had already gone through with it. 3 weeks ago, she told him she was staying late to help Ryan sort his meds. 3 weeks ago, he had just finished designing the centerpieces for their wedding reception, hand-cutting paper lilies because Sophia said real ones were too cliché. Now he realized, that wasn't gratitude, that wasn't kindness, that was strategy. He saw it clearly, how she still planned to marry him, legally bind his name to her, and then raise Ryan's child under the safety net of John's loyalty. No one would question it, not her parents, not the world. She'd paint him as the noble husband. He'd pay the bills, carry the burden. Ryan would die, and she'd have the legacy she wanted. John felt a shift inside him, not anger, not clarity. He took the envelope, slid it back into her jacket, and walked out. He didn't confront her that day, he didn't shout, he made her breakfast. She smiled when she saw it. "Thanks," she said, sipping her tea. "You're being sweet again." He only nodded. That evening, while she video called Ryan in the bedroom, John stood in the kitchen and stared at the wedding calendar. It hung by the fridge, months of planning reduced to penciled notes and hearts drawn by Sophia's hand. He reached for a red marker. October 17th. The wedding date. He drew a single, hard red X across it. Then closed the marker slowly. He didn't tear the calendar down. He didn't crumple it. He just stood there, the red X glowing like a warning sign bleeding through the soft pastel plans. That night, John began clearing his life. He opened his file drawer and pulled out a folder labeled Research Offers. The one he hadn't touched since turning down the National Lab Fellowship. He scanned through the emails, some of the offers still stood, he hadn't answered out of loyalty. Now, he drafted 3 messages. "Hi Professor Liu, I'm reconsidering your offer for the winter quarter. Dr. Ames, I'd like to revisit our previous discussion if the position remains. To the Harvard Genomics Initiative, please find my updated research abstract attached." He scheduled them for the next morning, 8 a.m. sharp. Then he opened a second drawer, pulled out a manila envelope. Inside, photos, old ones, him and Sophia, travel tickets, movie stubs, the first menu from the diner they used to visit during college. He flipped through them, then placed them all into a new envelope labeled, Return to Sender. He laid it on the coffee table. Sophia didn't notice, she was humming in the shower. When she stepped out later, wrapped in a towel, she asked, "What are you thinking about these days?" John smiled softly. "Timing." She iggled. "Oh, like baby timing?" He didn't answer, just kissed her forehead. She leaned into it, and he whispered in his mind, "Goodbye." John began early on a Sunday morning, when the city outside was still quiet and gray. The apartment was a museum of everything he had once built for Sophia, soft lighting, muted curtains, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the hallway. He picked up one of the matching mugs they'd bought 2 years ago, the ones she said made their mornings look like a cafe ad. Her mug had a tiny crack she never noticed. His was still perfect. He wrapped them both in old newspaper and set them into a cardboard box without a label. One by one, he moved through the apartment like a man dismantling a set he'd built for a play that had closed, the untouched pajamas he'd bought her after she complained about the cold nights, the throw blanket she said was too scratchy but kept anyway for Instagram photos. The handwritten notes he used to leave in her bag, "Don't skip lunch," or "Good luck today," folded and forgotten. He packed them all. His hands were steady, his face betrayed nothing. On the dining table, his phone sat open, screen glowing with old messages. He scrolled back through months of text chains. His words filled the screen, whole paragraphs about dinner plans, her mother's health, funny articles he thought she'd like. Her replies, Okay. Busy. A chat log of one man's devotion slowly turning into an echo chamber. He stared at it, thumb hovering over delete, but he didn't press it. He simply locked the screen and set it face down. Later that afternoon, he drove to his parents' house. His mother was tending to the small garden she always fussed over, his father inside repairing an old radio. John hugged her a little longer than usual. She noticed. "Something's wrong," she said softly. "I'm joining a closed research lab," John replied. His voice was calm, as if discussing the weather. "It's out of the city, I'll be gone for a while." "And the wedding?" she asked carefully. "LA. It's off," he said. She frowned, a crease deepening between her brows. "What happened?" He only shook his head. "This time, I'm not sacrificing myself." His mother touched his arm but didn't press. She'd always known John was the kind of man who only spoke when he had decided everything already. She made him tea and sat with him in silence. The warmth of the cup in his hands felt like a memory of something distant and honest. When he returned to the apartment that evening, Sophia was on the couch, laptop open, scrolling through honeymoon packages. She looked up, bright and casual. "What do you think of Bali, or maybe Santorini for the photos?" He placed his keys on the counter. "Both sound good," he said. She smiled, dialing Ryan immediately. "He thinks Bali sounds good too," she told the phone. Her voice glowed like warm honey. "Isn't that sweet?" John smiled back, but it didn't reach his eyes. That night, after she'd fallen asleep mid-video call, he sat at the kitchen table with the calendar spread in front of him. 12 days left until the wedding date, 12 days until the end of the life he'd been living. Each square on the calendar was blank except for her scrawled reminders: dress fitting, cake tasting, meet florist. He drew another red X over the day that had just passed. The ink bled slightly into the paper, like a vein. 12 days, he felt them in his bones, a countdown carved under his skin. Each day after that followed the same rhythm. He'd pack a little more, cancel another vendor, redirect another deposit back to his account, quietly update his resume for the lab. He spoke less and less, she noticed, but only enough to say, "You're quiet lately." "Just tired," he'd answer. At night, when she rehearsed vows to Ryan under her breath in the bathroom, thinking John couldn't hear, he sat in the dark of their bedroom, hands clasped, breathing throbs. Ugh, the weight of it. Once, she walked in on him folding his clothes into a suitcase. "You going somewhere?" she asked lightly. "Just sorting things," he said. She smiled, unconcerned, already halfway out the door. "Don't forget the invitations," she reminded him. He watched her go, then placed another stack of shirts into the bag. On the 12th day, he opened a drawer he'd left untouched for years. Inside lay the acceptance letter from the National Lab. The ink had faded slightly at the edges. He smoothed it out, slid it into a fresh folder, and placed it on top of his packed bag. 12 days had become one. The apartment was half empty, though she hadn't noticed, the bookshelves missing his texts, the closet missing his suits, the drawers missing his socks. Sophia's laughter drifted from the living room as she scrolled through honeymoon photo ideas with Ryan on video call. Her smile glowed in the blue light of her phone. John stood in the doorway and watched her for a moment, not with anger, not even with sorrow, with something like closure. He turned back to the calendar, drew one last red X, the marker squeaked against the paper. And then he closed the calendar and set it face down on the counter, as if sealing a chapter he no longer wished to read. 12 days ago he'd been a man with a wedding. Tonight he was a man leaving quietly, like a ghost walking out of his own life. She never looked up. Sophia arrived at the wedding hotel with a soft glow in her smile and a camera-ready gleam in her eyes. The chauffeur opened the door of the white rental car, and she stepped out in heels too pristine to have touched real earth. Her hands clutched her phone and a customized Starbucks cup with Mrs. Sophia Carter written in gold. She waved at the hotel entrance, assuming cameras might be nearby for a vlog. Her dress was arriving in a private van, the makeup artist was on standby, and Ryan had already texted a heart emoji. She expected adoration, applause. Instead, she stepped into the lobby and froze. There were no wedding signs, no check-in counters reserved for her guests, no florists bustling around, no decor crew preparing the ballroom. She approached the front desk, confusion masked by a strained smile. "Hi, Sophia Fields, I'm the bride, my fiancé booked the..." The concierge blinked, then frowned slightly, typing something into the computer. "Ah, yes, Ms. Fields. The reservation for the ballroom and guest suites was cancelled 2 weeks ago, by Mr. John." Silence fell like a brick. Sophia's fingers curled tightly around her phone. "What?" The concierge turned the screen discreetly. "Here's the email confirmation. He cancelled all services, full refund requested." "No," Sophia muttered. "That's not possible. We just did the cake tasting 3 days ago." "I believe he also had the bakery order redirected and the design refunded," the concierge added with a careful smile. "Is there anything else I can help you with?" Sophia stared blankly, her ears rang, her breath caught high in her chest. She turned and bolted out of the lobby, nearly dropping her cup, stumbling into her own confusion. By the time she reached the apartment, her mind was a whirlwind of disbelief. She slammed the door open. "John?" she shouted. "John!" Silence answered. The apartment was whole. Low, not messy, not abandoned in haste, but cleared with precision. His side of the closet was empty, his desk drawers stripped clean. The bookshelf, once filled with medical journals and drafts of research, held only decorative photo frames with missing photos. She tore open the calendar hanging in the hallway. Each day until today had been marked with a red X. And scrawled across the square for their wedding day were 2 words written in sharp, thick ink. "Let's break up." Sophia's knees buckled. She sank onto the couch, her hands shaking as she tried calling him. No answer. Texts turned green. She tried again. And again, no response. Finally, in a moment of desperation, she dialed Deborah. John's old friend, the woman Sophia had always found dull and forgettable. Deborah picked up on the second ring. "Didn't think you'd call me." "Where is he?" Sophia snapped, voice quivering. "Tell him this isn't funny, the guests are coming, the honeymoon's paid for, what the hell is happening?" Deborah didn't answer immediately. The silence dragged, weighty and deliberate. Then, in a tone dry and controlled, she said, "John's gone, and this is not a game to him, not anymore." "What does that mean?" Sophia gasped. "He didn't even say anything to me. We were fine." "No," Deborah replied coldly. "You were delusional. He was leaving piece by piece. You just never noticed." Sophia's voice cracked. "But I told him everything, about Ryan, that I owed him my life, that this baby isn't about cheating." "You mean the baby you plan to raise under John's name?" Sophia's mouth opened, then closed. "Do you even remember who saved your life that day?" Deborah asked, calm as glass. Sophia blinked, suddenly transported backward. College, a rainy night. A stranger had followed her on her way back to campus. She remembered running, screaming. And then, someone stepping in, a blur. She'd fainted, and when he woke up, Ryan was beside her, holding her hand. "It was Ryan," she whispered. "He stayed with me." "Yes," Deborah said. "He stayed. John bled." Sophia's heart stopped. "What?" "John is the one who jumped in. He's the one who fought the guy off. He was stabbed, almost died. He was in a coma for 3 days. Sophia shook her head in disbelief. "No, no one told me that." "You were unconscious, then sedated. Ryan never corrected the story. And John?" Deborah's voice tightened. "He didn't want credit, said it didn't matter, as long as you were safe." Sophia's lips trembled. She remembered sitting by a hospital bed, holding a hand, crying. But was it Ryan's? She couldn't even recall now. "He never told me?" she asked, barely audible. "He didn't think you needed to know, not because he didn't care," Deborah said, "but because he loved you, and you treated him like a placeholder, a walking apology fund, a name to attach to a child that isn't his." Sophia clutched her stomach, suddenly aware of the weight inside her. She whispered, "I didn't know." "That's the problem," Deborah said, voice cracking now. "You never tried to know." The line went dead. Sophia sat frozen. Around her, the wedding photo vision board remained taped to the wall. The dress receipt was still pinned to the fridge. Her hospital scans were tucked in the drawer, labeled "Our baby's first miracle," but there was no hour. There never had been. Outside, the sky had begun to darken, the first signs of dusk painting the world in soft gray. She stood slowly, walking to the balcony, staring out over the city like it might offer an answer. But all she saw was absence. No groom, no wedding, no love story, just a mistake she could never take back, and a man who had loved her quietly, completely, until the day he chose not to. Sophia spent the next 3 days in a fog, her hands trembling each time she lifted them to her face. She'd stopped wearing the ring John had given her, not because she wanted to, but because each time she looked at it she felt the weight of a wound she couldn't see. The truth Deborah had told her gnawed at her like a living thing. John had been stabbed for her. John had been unconscious for 3 days. John had let Ryan stand in the light of a story that was never his. And she had built her gratitude on a lie. She stopped answering Ryan's calls. She stopped going to appointments. In the pale light of the bathroom, she stared at her own reflection, whispering, "I didn't know, I didn't know." But that didn't matter. She had still chosen someone else. She had still planted another man's child under the name of the one who saved her life. The night before her final decision, she stood outside a clinic window as rain slid down her coat. She pressed a hand to her abdomen, whispering apologies to someone who would never be born. She was ending a life she had no right to begin. When she emerged hours later, she felt lighter, but also as if she had removed the last illusion she could hide behind. Her eyes were red and her hair clung to her face. She had thought John's rejection would be her punishment. Now she understood this was only the beginning. She began searching for him, calling every contact, messaging every mutual friend. Most ignored her. Some sent curt replies. No one told her where he was. Deborah had gone silent. Sophia even drove past his parents' house, waiting in her car for hours, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. Nothing. Finally, a message arrived in her inbox from a professor she barely remembered meeting at one of John's award dinners. "If you're looking for him, he accepted the capital research position. Don't disturb him. It's a closed program." Sophia book. Ed a ticket the same day. The capital felt colder, bigger. The lab he worked at stood behind layers of security gates and glass walls, sleek and bright. She waited outside the entrance for hours, clutching a paper cup of coffee gone cold. Employees in white coats passed by, none recognizing her. At last, near dusk, the door slid open and she saw him. John walked out in a dark coat over a lab shirt, his posture straighter than she remembered. His hair was a little longer, brushed back neatly. He had always looked like a man who carried weight on his shoulders. Now, he looked like a man who had set it down, and beside him walked a young woman she didn't know. She was small, with dark hair pulled back into a low ponytail, wearing simple clothes and no makeup. She was laughing at something John had said. Her eyes were soft, warm, fixed on him in a way Sophia realized she herself had never done. Sophia stepped forward. "John," she called. Her voice cracked. He stopped, slowly turned. For a moment, his eyes searched her face, not with longing, not with hate, just recognition, like seeing a stranger from an old photograph. "John," she said again, walking toward him. Please listen to me." Anna glanced at him, then at Sophia. "Do you want me to?" "It's okay," John said gently. "Wait inside." Anna hesitated but obeyed, slipping back through the sliding doors. Her presence left a faint warmth in the cold evening air. Sophia stood in front of him, trembling. "I know the truth," she blurted. "Deborah told me. It was you. You saved me that night. Not Ryan. You." John nodded once. "I did. And you never told me." "I didn't need to," he said quietly. "You were safe. That was enough." Tears spilled down her face. "Ryan lied to me. He let me believe." John's gaze was steady. "Ryan didn't stop you from asking questions." She flinched. "I ended it," she whispered. "The pregnancy. It's over. I couldn't keep lying." John said nothing. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I was blind. I didn't see you. I didn't see anything." Still nothing. Finally, she stepped closer, reaching out as if to touch him, but stopping herself. "Let's start over," she pleaded. "Please, we can go back. We can fix this." John tilted his head slightly, a gesture she knew meant he was weighing his words. Then he said, softly, "I chased you for 5 years. You never looked back. Now I've stopped." Her breath hitched. "But I love you," she said, a sob breaking through. His eyes flickered with something, maybe pity, maybe memory, but his voice was even. "You never did. You just don't like being the one left behind." Sophia covered her face with her hands. The sound of her crying filled the space between them like static. She wanted to say she did love him. She wanted to list every moment she could remember, every time she had thought of him but not said it, but the words turned to ash in her mouth. John looked past her to the glass doors where Anna waited, watching quietly. He stepped around Sophia, his coat brushing her arm as he moved. "Goodbye, Sophia," he said. "Please," she whispered, reaching out, but her hand fell on empty air. John walked to the door. Anna stepped out again, and he took her hand without hesitation. Their fingers laced easily, naturally, as if they had been made for it. Anna looked at Sophia, not with malice, but with a kind of gentle sorrow. Then she turned back to John, and together they walked toward the street, their figures framed by the cold neon light of the lab's sign. Sophia stood frozen, tears streaking her face, watching the man who had once been her anchor disappear hand in hand with someone who gave him what she never had, warmth without conditions. She stayed there until the doors closed behind them and the night swallowed the street. Only then did she whisper to no one, "I was wrong." But John didn't hear her. He was already gone. 2 years passed like the hush after a storm, not with drama, but with stillness. Sophia never moved cities. She stayed in the same apartment, even though it echoed too loudly at night. She never deleted John's number, though she never texted again. What would she say? "I'm still sorry? I miss what we never had." The silence between them had grown into something sacred, a wall she could not cross. Every Sunday she brought fresh chrysanthemums to John's parents' doorstep. Not always to talk. Sometimes, just to listen. John's mother would pour her tea with kind hands but never asked questions. His father once said gently, "You're looking for someone who left long ago." Sophia only nodded. She knew. She didn't date again. Men approached, some with charm, some with good hearts, but she declined, politely, then firmly. She didn't say it out loud, but a part of her had closed, the same part that had once laughed at John's dry humor, or leaned into his silent loyalty without ever understanding it. Sometimes, in moments when the city blurred past her taxi window, she remembered his hand resting quietly on hers at hospital bedsides, or the time he waited in the rain outside her university building with no umbrella, just because she had forgotten hers. She remembered not what he said, but what he didn't. And in those quiet rewinds, Sophia began to understand, not all betrayals are loud, some are just choices made in blindness. She heard the news by accident. A friend of a friend had shared a post on social media. A photo, low quality, almost a blur, but unmistakable. John, dressed in an ivory suit, standing beside Anna, holding her hand in the city registry office. They were getting married. Sophia stared at the screen for a long time. She didn't cry, she didn't rage. The moment felt inevitable, like something that had always been waiting at the end of her road. She still had one thing left to do. The ceremony was small, family only. No public invitations, no press, no spectacle, just love, quiet and real. But Sophia came anyway, unannounced. She stood in the back of the room, behind a column, where no one would see her clearly. John stood at the altar in a soft grey suit, his dark hair neatly combed, a faint smile resting on his face. But it was Anna who drew the room's light. She wore a simple white gown with pearl buttons and a single braid twisted into her bun. She didn't glow like a bride in a fairy tale. She shone, like someone who had walked through reality and chosen love anyway. When they said their vows, Sophia didn't look away. When they kissed, she pressed her hand gently to her chest, as if steadying something inside her. She left before the reception, quietly, but not before slipping a small, folded note into an envelope marked John on the gift table. No return name, no signature, just these words. "I was wrong, I let go too late, I wish you a life full of love, the kind I could never give." Later that evening, as golden light filtered through the tall windows of the reception hall, John sat briefly in a quiet corridor, holding the note in his hands. He read it once, then folded it again, with the same precision he used to fold lab instructions or paper cranes in his old apartment. He didn't sigh, he didn't smile, he simply stood, walked out into the courtyard where Anna waited beneath a cascade of hanging lights, and took her hand. She looked up at him. "Everything okay?" John slipped the note into his coat pocket. "Yeah." She tilted her head. "Was it from her?" John met her gaze evenly. Yes. Anna didn't flinch. Do you want to talk about it? John looked back at the reception hall, filled with laughter, clinking glasses, warm voices, then forward again. No, he said, all that once was, has died. He pulled Anna gently towards him, forehead resting on hers. All that is to come begins now. And as the music swelled behind them and the lights danced in Anna's eyes, John smiled. Not for the past, not in spite of it, but because he had finally lived through it. And the door closed, firmly, quietly, finally, on Sophia's chapter.